let me tell you about my city. It's wild gritty.
Welcome into another episode of The Change-Up on WOAY Sports. I'm Sports Director Matt Digby, joined by Mr. Tom Beal. And Tom, a couple days, it's going to be October 1st, which means we've made it through 1 month of the college football season in West Virginia.
Oh, yeah, man. We're just getting rolling, too. This is the time of the year where, summer's officially over. We're into fall. The weather's changing a little bit, and it feels like football weather now. So it feels like the season's really about to get going. We're going to see some good ball over these next few months, and I'm really excited about it.
It really does. And West Virginia is off to a 3-0 start. They got the season opening win over Missouri, then the win the next week against Youngstown State. Then they had a bye week followed by a win over BYU in FedEx Field, a game that it looked like the Mountaineers had a lot of momentum. Then they let BYU back into the game, but a couple key defensive plays getting that, securing the win for the Mountaineers.
Yeah, and defense, one of the big question marks heading into this season. That Youngstown State game, they did struggle a bit. They weren't able to create any turnovers in that game until the very end. But they actually stepped up a lot in that BYU game, and an interception ended up sealing the deal. So some good things for them moving forward. We'll see how they do this week against Kansas State.
Absolutely. And one guy who was at that game in Landover, Maryland, joins us now on the phone, our friend Dale Wolfley from the WVU Varsity Club. He also does the pregame and postgame show on the Mountaineers Sports Network on IMG. Dale, welcome back to the Change-Up.
Hey, fellas. Thanks for having me. Always enjoy spending time with my Southern West Virginia boys.
Always glad to have you on. First off, 3-0, non-conference play in the books, and like last year, WVU, this year, not as convincing wins as we saw last year, but they were able to get the job done when it mattered most.
Well, absolutely. Now, if you want to go back to the opening game of Missouri, I think that was a fairly convincing win. Youngstown State, I think they struggled in the first half, faced adversity against a really good FCS Youngstown State team, came out in the second half and took care of business, and then went into FedEx Field in Landover, Maryland, and faced the BYU Cougars, who's a national brand. I'll tell you, I believe they're extremely, extremely underrated as a 1-3 team. As much as you can say underrated, they've lost their 3 games by a total of 7 points to some good quality teams. So I'm going to take that victory, and we're going to get out of there with a W, and we're 3-0.
All right, and so, Dale, we're a month into the season now, and obviously defense, one of the big question marks heading into the season. After that Youngstown State game, defensive coordinator Tony Gibson was really disappointed with the way that he coached and the way that his defense played, and he wanted to work on a lot of things to try to improve them with that bye week, and they came out and played a lot better against BYU. So what are your overall impressions of the defense through the first month, and do you think that they're going to get better as the season goes on?
I think they're going to get better week by week. I know Coach Gibson, the defensive staff, they are very solid in their fundamentals, and what they're going to do is they're going to keep this defense motivated. Coach Gibson is going to tell you like it is. If you don't play well, he's going to let you know. If you do play well, he's going to tell you that you did a good job and keep getting better. There is no doubt in my mind that this defense, the way Coach Gibby has to do it as personnel-wise and schematically, because if you remember, beginning of the season, of course, we had to replace 8 defensive starters. Draydon Askew-Henry goes down, so that makes it 9. So you have a defense that has not played a lot together, has not gelled in chemistry as well yet. So, of course, I expect them to get better. They're going to have to play hard. I mean, last week they had to step up and make some big plays to get that W.
Yeah, and it was a great performance by the defense preserving the win, but it was also another efficient performance, so to speak, from the offensive line. I know they've had a couple of injuries themselves. Yadi Kajust had an injury against Missouri, and he's out for the season, but Colt McKivitz has really stepped in, and Tyler Orlowski, who we kept hearing about in the preseason when he was getting all the praise and the namings to the watch list. The offensive line, I think, has also done very well in terms of protecting Skylar Howard, giving the running back space to run, and they've really allowed guys like Russell Shell, Justin Crawford, and even Kennedy McCoy to come into their own.
Well, absolutely. And don't forget about the wide receivers being on the same page with Skyler now, with mainly them getting that extra year in. So the offense is in very good shape right now. And give a big shout out to Adam Pankey, who actually went into the game last week as a left guard, and then he played all left tackle, the whole game of left tackle, and he did a tremendous job. I mean, the offensive line is giving Skyler Howard time, and that allows Skyler Howard to view the field and to make the correct throws. You see him doing the quick game, you see him doing the intermediate game, and, of course, you see the big ball, the long ball, the home run ball, mainly to Shelton Gibson. And he's throwing at a 68.5% completion percentage. He's averaging 327 yards passing per contest. Now, that's third in the Big 12. In total yards, with him combined running and passing, he's averaging 362 yards. And that also is third in the Big 12. Skyler Howard is playing the best football I've ever seen him play up to this point.
So I think a big part of Howard's success so far is that he's really utilized all of his receivers, whether it be White or Dakeil Shorts or Shelton Gibson. As you know, you see the team up close a lot more than most people. Do you see as the season goes on that one of these guys will kind of emerge as his primary go-to receiver? Because so far he's really spread the ball around to everyone.
Hey, I hope not. You know, the more the merrier. The more threats we have out there, they can't single up on or double up on any one guy. So I like the fact that he's spreading the ball around. It means he's seeing the field, and that is a great sign. If you get the protection, you don't have happy feet, you're not throwing off with 1 foot, you're not running out of the pocket trying to make plays. That is a huge bonus. Now, if your receivers on the flip side of that can know exactly what Skyler's thinking when they're looking at the secondary, that makes that even more efficient. Now, let's take a look at those running backs, because they're also passing threats as well. When you saw Russell Shell get the ball on a swing pass, it was 3rd and 10. Now, we're inside the red zone. If he doesn't make a couple of jukes and get that first down, then we're kicking a field goal, and that does what to you in the point spread? At 35-32 against BYU. It was a huge thing. Justin Crawford, the same thing. They got ball skills, man. So right now, this offense is really clicking at a high tempo.
Yeah, and another thing that I've seen the last several weeks is the way Skyler Howard's able to take care of himself physically, because we saw him go down against Missouri, and we had to bring in William Crest for a series in the fourth quarter. He turns the ball over on a fumble inside the 10-yard line. Mountaineer defense holds the Tigers to no points, but then Chris Chugunov comes in. He throws a pick. Again, the defense has the ability to limit the Tigers in terms of offense, but knowing what we know from the Missouri game and how that second quarter played out, is Skyler aware that he may need to take care of himself more, because he knows that as talented as Crest or Chugunov may be, they had an opportunity on Missouri to show that, and they did not do so?
Well, I'm sure he knows that he is the best man suited right now to lead this offense. There's no doubt with his experience. Again, I think his accuracy is right on. He's zipping the ball. He's putting touch on it. I'm very happy for the young man, because he has taken a lot of heat. And to be quite honest with you, since going back to last season, we're 8-1, including the bowl game, so far in the last 9 games. So I think that says a lot. I think this offense with the receivers are going to only continue to get better. I believe that the more success they have, the more confidence and growth they will have. And the offensive line, again, is playing extremely well, and I'm really, really impressed. And Tyler Orlowski, in my book, you are the best center in the game, even though you did screw up that snap.
Absolutely. Well, it is definitely an important stat. They're 8-1 the last 9 games, but that one loss coming to the team that will be in Morgantown this weekend. What's that?
A good lead-in.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. The Kansas State Wildcats coming in. I actually did some research just to check to make sure. And Kansas State, along with Oklahoma, those are the only 2 Big 12 schools the Mountaineers have yet to beat on the gridiron since joining the conference. Is that kind of something that's almost weighing on the minds of those who have been with the program a little bit longer?
Yeah, you know what? I don't think it should. I think this is a brand new season. This is 2016. You know, on my TV segments, on Mountaineer Game Day, we take a little bit of fun with that and think that he's in our head. But really, you know, he's not. These guys are out. Skylar Howard is in a different place than he was a year ago. He was injured. He had a cast on his hand when the last time he was at Kansas State. He had a cast on his throwing hand. So he's in a different place. The receivers are in a different place. The offensive line's in a different place. The running backs are in a different place. Go on to the defense. Okay, they are in a different place as well. And I'm going to tell you this right now, is that who cares about the past? It's about right now what you have. Right now we have team speed, which I like, to give us the victory.
So, Dale, as we move into conference play, you know, with all your experience around the team and this program, do you notice a kind of shift in their mentality or the way they go about things as it goes from the non-conference to the conference portion of the season?
See, you know, maybe. I would not do that. As a player, every single game was important to me because I wanted to make sure that I was on top of every single play. Obviously, you have plus plays, you have minuses plays, but, you know, every single game to me was important. So I didn't care who it was. Now, this is going to be exciting. We are 3-0. We are opening up the Big 12. It's homecoming. It's striped the stadium. I mean, it's sold out. Okay, it's going to be on national TV. There's a lot of things to get up for this. Now, let me tell you this. I would say that because they are 0-4 since joining the Big 12, that it will mean something to them, and they will play extra hard because they do want to beat the Silver Fox and head coach Bill Schneider.
Yeah, a guy who's been at the program a very long time. I remember when he was there, his first stint, and then I think mid-2000s, he decided he wanted to retire. They brought in Ron Prince from Virginia for a couple years. It didn't work out, and they kind of begged Snyder. That's what I was told in the way to come back, and Snyder said sure, and now he's in his 8th season of stint number 2. How much of that is a factor as well, just going up against a guy who maybe is not revered in the same way that some guys talk about Nick Saban or Urban Meyer, but he is still very respected among the college football community?
Well, he's a Hall of Fame coach, number one. He's a living Hall of Fame coach and working Hall of Fame coach. The stadium is called the Bill Schneider Family Stadium. I mean, how cool is that? But I will tell you this, with all great respect, you know, you could say that he's not as revered as much as the others. He may have done more with what he had than the other coaches have done, because their talent level is not always above par or equal to their opponents. And it has not always been that way. They've had to use a lot of junior college transfers and four-year transfers to get where they needed to go. It's not that way as much anymore now because they've established themselves somewhat, but they have had to do that. But they have always consistently won, even with lesser talent. And I think that has a lot to do with head coach Bill Schneider, his coaching staff. I mean, if you look at his coaching staff, just go and look at him, you're going to see a ton of gray hair. That means that those guys got tons of experience and wisdom in the game of football, and they teach those young men very well. In fact, because of the many junior college players that they've used, you've seen them continually start out and maybe struggle in the first couple of games, but by the end of the season, they were always very, very strong. And I think that has a lot to do with the coaching staff and continually getting them to improve their players.
All right, and so far this season, Kansas State 2-1. That one loss coming against Stanford, and they gave Stanford one of the better teams in the country. They gave them a really good game. So, what are some of the strengths of this Wildcats team, and how do the Mountaineers attack it?
Well, I'll tell you what, the strength is the defense at this point of the season by far. I mean, they're returning 8 starters on that defensive front and secondary, of course. And, you know, Jordan Willis, the defensive end, the senior, he's 6'5", 258. He's a havoc wreaker. He's strong. He's physical. He just is tough. The great thing about what Kansas State does, they can put pressure on an offensive line in the run game and in the pass game and against the quarterback with just 4 of their defensive front. They don't have to blitz the whole time. They only blitz about 25% of the time, and usually it's just a fifth man blitzing. So they're going man free, you know, free over the top, playing center field, everybody else man, and they're just getting it done. I mean, they love the 42 coverage, which is cover 4 quarters to the field, and then they love cover 2 to the boundary. Now, that can be very confusing to an offense and a quarterback especially, if they communicate it correctly and execute it correctly. But when you put tempo against that, and then you go ahead and put a Mountaineer crowd going crazy at home against that, that is tough to run a combination secondary. I'm telling you right now, if they try to do that, they could put themselves in a lot of jeopardy for communicating on the field and having missed assignments.
So you think that up-tempo, maybe no-huddle offense is the way to go with this team, try to wear them down and tire them out?
Well, I'm not as smart as Dana Holgerson is, but if it was me, I'd be trying to go ahead and dictate to them what coverage they're going to be in, because, like I said, they like the combination coverage of 42, cover 4 and cover 2. They like cover 1 with the blitz, which is man-free over the top, but they like cover 4 and they like cover 3. It really is about a 20% split amongst those right there. So when you look at that, you want to go tempo, and you want them to have less time to communicate, have the noise of the crowd, so they're going to have to go simple, maybe cover 4. Because when you try to go for 42, you have to really communicate in that secondary. There's one senior in the secondary, Barnett. He's very good. He's a player I like to watch. I have great respect for his attitude, the way he approaches the game and executes on the field. But the other safety and 2 corners are sophomores, so they're not as quite as experienced as Barnett is. And I think that Kansas State may have to just keep it very simple in those coverages.
Absolutely. And what's the status of the team right now in terms of maybe potentially looking ahead, because it is a very unique setup, the schedule, that after the Kansas State game comes the second bye week. I know last year that wasn't until later in the month of October that WVU had the second bye week, but you get the win over Kansas State. That puts you at 4-0 going into the bye week, and certainly would get a lot of attention from the pollsters, because as it stands right now, WVU is getting votes, but they're not quite able to reach that top 25 just yet. But what does it mean, the way the schedule is set up, that you open Big 12 play with the win, then you have another bye week before you go on the road to Texas Tech?
I think this game is pivotal. Absolutely. I think WVU needs to win this game. I think they will win this game with their overall team speed and skill, and physicality for that matter as well. But, it's Dana Holgerson coming out party, in my opinion. I think it's where this team, I'll go back to BYU last week. I think in previous years, maybe WVU doesn't win that game at FedEx Field against BYU, just because of the self-doubting. I think what you saw there was a little bit of a graduation that, hey, they overcame adversity and obstacles, and they came out with a victory, and they made the plays when they had to make the plays. I think that's a characteristic you're seeing of this team developing as they go along. So I think that this game is huge. It's Big 12. We are definitely looking to improve our top 25 status, but all that will come when you win. You know what I'm saying? So what we really need to do is go out there, establish a firm victory, and then have a bye week where you're going to have to look at a quarterback in Mahomes that's, I don't know, I think he's throwing for 500 yards a game. He's going to probably set the all-time NCAA FBS record, and they're averaging about 61 points per game. So it'll be an extra week and a half to really prepare for a passing offense, which is quite different from what they've seen in Kansas State and BYU in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, because I was at that Texas Tech game last year. Mahomes really did give them fits, and we had heard good things about him the past several games, the past several weeks leading up to that contest in Morgantown. But, Mahomes is definitely going to be a quarterback to keep an eye on. He certainly belongs in that category of elite quarterbacks that the Big 12 has a lot of, including Howard, including Baker Mayfield from Oklahoma, Shane Buechele from Texas. But first off, the key right now, Tom, would be getting business taken care of against Kansas State. Yeah,
well, you got to take it one game at a time. I'm just curious, Dale, having these 2 bye weeks so close to each other, I mean, obviously rest is always nice, but it's probably not the most ideal setup having them so close to each other. Do you have any sense of how people around the program feel about that? I mean, are they a little frustrated by the fact that the byes are so close, or are they just happy to have the rest regardless?
No, I'm going to say the approach you take is this is what we were given, and this is how we're going to succeed, even though we're given this situation. I think if you looked at a perfect world, a bye would be pretty good a few weeks down the road to give you a break when you get towards the latter half of the season. But again, it's like the next mentality up, or the next man up mentality. Is what do you have to do? You just got to accept the circumstances as they are, and the reality of the situation is you get these bye weeks, make the most of them, and then you're going to have to finish strong, regardless. You want to win the Big 12, you want to reach your goals, and you want to get to that big bowl game, well, you just got to deal with what reality is and go win and be victorious. Period.
On the phone now with Dale Wolfley. Dale, before we let you go, the big news out of Morgantown today is that WVU and Pitt have announced the renewal of their basketball backyard brawl rivalry. And I know last year they announced football would resume a backyard brawl in 2022. What's the feeling with that news today that they're going to meet on the basketball court starting not this upcoming season, but the season afterward? And, you know, only 6 years away from renewing the backyard brawl on the football field.
Yeah, I don't like those guys. You know, Pitt's a four-letter word to me, and I'll tell you what, I'm always going to dislike them regardless of the situation. It's always great to be able to chance to compete against them. I don't care if it's in basketball. I don't care if it's in track, whatever it is. It's always a pleasure to actually go out and compete and hopefully beat them. And I'm going to tell you what, fellas, you know, it reminds me of one video clip that every time I hear Pitt, I see Jack Fleming on the basketball court holding up a sign saying, "I hate Pitt." You know, and that's what I think when I think of the Pitt WVU rivalry. And go back to Jack, and it's awesome memories. I mean, I can still remember playing against Chris Spielman back in 1989, and you know, going out with trash talking with them, fighting them, punching every play. You know, obviously within the rules of the game, but go out there and just smack talking, hitting, cutting. You know what I mean? It was good stuff, man. That was the good old days when we had Pitt on the schedule, and you just loved to hate them.
Yeah, I love the passion. So given that hatred of Pitt, who do you like in this Pitt-Marshall game coming up this weekend?
I like Marshall because I can't stand Pitt. So, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and, you know, Doc Holliday has always been a longtime friend, and I'm really happy for him and Billy down there, Billy Legg, and they've had a tremendous amount of success. So, hey, I'm just really happy for the Marshall program under Doc Holliday.
All right. Well, Dale Wolfley from the WVU Varsity Club, also with the Mountaineers Sports Network, friend of the show. We can definitely call him that. Dale, we appreciate you coming on, buddy. Always great to talk Mountaineer football with you.
Hey, let's get a victory this weekend, and we're going to sing Country Roads, and we're going to head into the bye week, and we'll go from there.
We will. I think they could get the job done. I'll be at that game. They have not lost when I've been there. They're undefeated when you've been at the game, Tom. 1-0. So I don't know. Maybe we are the lucky charm. Maybe we aren't. But the fact is, you know, when we've been there, the Mountaineers have not lost.
Well, you better show up Saturday then.
We will. I will absolutely be there Saturday. Good talking to you, Dale. We'll see you soon.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. That was Dale Wolfley of the WVU Varsity Club. Again, the pregame and postgame host on the Mountaineer Sports Network on IMG. And he's excited for Big 12 play. I mean, the non-conference stuff is great, but that was where, for me as a fan of college football in general, that's what's going to matter, the conference results. And getting a great start against Kansas State is absolutely pivotal.
Yeah, and that's why I always love talking to Dale, because he's so passionate about it, and you can feel it. You know, now that we're moving into that conference part of the season, and you know, he said, you know, you want to win every game, conference or non-conference, but you can really feel there's a shift in the mentality. I mean, these games, you know, because you play these teams every single year, it breeds a bit of a rivalry. And you're getting into that point of the season where this is what makes the difference as far as, you know, playing for a Big 12 championship. You got to win these games. It starts with a tough Kansas State team. And if they can win this game, then get a bye week and then pick right back up going into their schedule, I think they're in a really good spot.
Yeah, you mentioned the Big 12 championship. We still have a year to go until they bring back that championship game. But that said, only two undefeated teams left in the conference right now, West Virginia and Baylor. And how about it? They meet each other the final week of the season in Morgantown on December 3rd, the day that the ACC is holding their championship game, Big 10, SEC is holding their championship game, Big 12 may have their de facto championship game.
Exactly, man. I mean, it's too bad we don't have the actual official title for it, but that's going to be a great matchup. And if both of those teams are still undefeated at that point in the season, that would be one heck of a game. So it should be great either way.
Yeah, it really should. Moving on to more college football now as we continue this first segment of the Change-Up. Other teams we cover, Marshall football, we mentioned they're at Pitt this weekend on a Saturday night. They're looking to bounce back from a tough 59-28 loss to Louisville, which, that said, I think there's no question Lamar Jackson is the front runner for the Heisman. He is that good of a player. You and I have gotten to see him on TV. I had the chance to see him in person this past weekend. He is the real deal.
Yeah, man. I mean, he's got 25 total touchdowns through these first few games. I mean, that's unheard of. I saw a stat the other day. I mean, Louisville's leading the nation in offensive touchdowns, and Lamar Jackson by himself is tied for third as far as programs, not players, but actual programs number of touchdowns. He would be tied for third right now if he was his own team. So it's just remarkable what he's done. I mean, he had the 7 against Marshall, which is just ridiculous. But I think all things considered, and given what we saw the week before against that Akron team where they gave up 65 points, not that bad of a performance for Marshall. They didn't have Chase Litton. They're starting a true freshman. And, Garrett Morrell didn't play great. He only had 59 yards passing, but he wasn't that bad either. Just the one interception. He even threw a couple of touchdown passes. And, they played to kind of earn their respect. This is one of the top teams in the nation, and they didn't just roll over and let them put up 70, 80 points on them. They held their own as best they could. And, I think that says something about this team moving forward.
It really does, and especially the good news for Marshall fans, Doc Holliday announcing earlier this week that Chase Litton will play against the Panthers. That's going to be huge to see him back on the gridiron for the Thundering Herd. But like you were saying, they did hold their own, specifically in the first quarter. They did give up a long touchdown pass, Lamar Jackson to James Quick, but that was it for the first quarter. They really were able to get him flustered at some point. Former Beckley Flying Eagle Chase Hancock even got a sack on their opening drive to force a punt. And it was actually announced also earlier this week that both Hancock and a fellow former Beckley Flying Eagle, Clint Van Horn, will serve as the game captains this week. So Southern West Virginia being represented well for Marshall.
That's pretty exciting stuff. I mean, all that being said, though, they really need to go get a win this week against Pitt. It's going to be a tough game out on the road, but you can't afford to fall at 1-3, especially, they opened that first game against Morgan State. They're feeling pretty good, and, we expected them to win that game against Akron. It didn't go so well. They really need to bounce back, win against Pitt, and hopefully the two Beckley guys can lead them there.
Absolutely. That would definitely put them in a much better mood the following week as they head into Conference USA play. They will be at North Texas on October 8th. Meanwhile, last weekend, you had a chance to go check out Virginia Tech. They finally break their voodoo against the East Carolina Pirates.
Yeah, well, they broke the ACC's voodoo against the East Carolina Pirates. They won 6 straight going into that game. And, from the get-go, really, Virginia Tech was in control the entire time. ECU scored a couple of touchdowns in the second half after the game was really out of reach. But Gerard Evans was, really impressive in that game. He had 4 total touchdowns, 3 of them passing. And then when the game was basically over in the second half, he had, I don't know if you had a chance to see the replay
I did
yet,
see this.
A 55-yard touchdown run where at the end he juked 4 guys in a row. Just watching it live, I was right there in the end zone when he came in, and that was just an unbelievable run. He has just overall great talent, passing, running the football. He made good decisions, didn't turn the ball over, and, this team put up a lot of points. I think they're in a really good spot, coming off 2 back-to-back blowout wins.
Yeah, I did see your shot of that touchdown run, and it is one of those that for us who are able to be on the field, see those types of plays from that close of a perspective, it's something that will stick with you for a very long time, just how impressive that play was.
I'm glad I was rolling because, I had so many highlights at that point in the game. There really wasn't much incentive to shoot, but, I kind of figured, hey, maybe I'll film one more drive and see if anything happens, and then he breaks out that run, and that was a big highlight for sure.
And also, Virginia Tech, they have this week off. They will be at North Carolina on the following week, October 8th. That was going to be a big incentive game because North Carolina came to Blacksburg last year in what was Frank Beamer's final home game. He had already announced his retirement at the end of the season a couple weeks prior to the UNC game, but the Tar Heels got the win in overtime. Also moving on, Concord University football, they're back to 2-2. They had a tough road win at West Virginia Wesleyan, and that's huge for them, I think. I had a chance to speak with Paul Price earlier this week. They're in a much better mood now than when they were the previous week when they were coming off the loss to Urbana.
Yeah, I think overall, first month of the season, they've been a little inconsistent. There's been some ups and downs, and, that'll happen. You just got a first-year coach. I know Paul Price has been with the program for a while, but, they're still trying to work the kinks out, and I think that, a game like last week is big as far as getting them to play more consistent and kind of establish their identity. And, hopefully moving forward, they can string together a few wins and really solidify who they are as a team.
Yeah, that was the one thing I really saw checking out the highlights, the growth of the team, because last year they went 5-5. All 5 of their wins were convincing and not close from the first quarter on. All their close games were losses. It came down to last-minute scores for the most part, or against UC, the University of Charleston, who they're playing this week. I remember that game very vividly. It was UC had the lead by 8. Concord was driving. They set up for a field goal. They tried to fake it with a touchdown pass, but the ball hung up in the air long enough on that pass for a defender to knock it away. UC takes over on downs, and they're able to run out the clock with several first-down conversions. But that was a great game. It was a historic game because ESPN3 actually streamed that game online. A big night for the Mountain East Conference. But I think the Golden Eagles and Mountain Lions will have a pretty good game this week.
Yeah, certainly. And when you win a game like they did last week, a close matchup where it comes down to the end, it certainly does a lot for a team's confidence and the morale moving forward. And I think this week against UC, they have another winnable game. So it's really a great opportunity for them to get themselves on track and try to climb the ladder a little bit in that Mountain East Conference as we hit the stretch run.
Yeah, they still have a lot of teams in the upper half currently of the Mountain East still to come. They have to go on the road to Shepherd in a couple weeks. They'll be hosting Glenville at the end of the month. Those teams are off to a great start. Shepherd, no surprise, they are coming off the trip to the national championship game in Division II, and they have quite a few guys back from that squad. But also, to wrap up our college football segment, Bluefield College, another tough week for the Rams. They are not a bad team. It's just a lot of what I saw from last year. They make way too many mistakes at crucial points of the game, and then when they figure out what went wrong and they're able to correct those mistakes, they're already 3-4 touchdowns behind.
Yeah, I really feel for them, because they've shown that, they can score offensively, they can put some points up on the board. It's just, when you give up 48, it's tough to win a game like that. And, they're still searching for that first win of the season. I hope they get it soon because, for those players in that locker room, no one likes to lose that many games. And, you're out there, you put your heart and soul into it, you're working for it every single week and trying to get that first win. So hopefully they can get it done here and get the monkey off their back and try to establish some momentum. Yeah,
they're on the road at Reinhardt this week. It doesn't help that they're in, I guess it might be an exaggeration to say this, but basically the NAIA's version of the SEC. Their conference is that loaded with teams ranked in the NAIA top 25. So that's always a tough challenge for any team. But they are on the road this week. They aren't back at Mitchell Stadium for a couple weeks, I think. They do have a bye week coming up, so it will be interesting to see how they treat that bye week. But that's going to wrap up this segment of the Change-Up. When we come back, we'll talk some high school sports, some pro sports. Very bittersweet weekend, to be honest. A lot of highs and lows, particularly in golf and in baseball. We'll touch on that in a couple minutes. You're listening to the Change-Up on WOAY Sports. And welcome back to the Change-Up on WOAY Sports. Matt Digby joined by Tom Beal. It's going to be a great week of high school football, great week of college football, great week of professional sports all around. But at the same time, though, it is a very bittersweet week for everyone in the sports community. If you've been following the national sports news, no doubt you've heard by now the news of the passing of Arnold Palmer, the true icon of American golf, nicknamed the King. with several major championships, a lot of tour victories, and really how he was able to establish himself as an icon of American culture to the point where he had a beverage named after him. I got to ask you, when did you first hear of the Arnold Palmer drink, Tom?
I mean, I gotta say, at least 10 years ago. I don't remember exactly when it came out, but I mean, that was always like the drink of choice. If you're gonna pivot off of the soda, and go to something else. And I think it's a little unfortunate in some senses that I think a lot of people in this generation are just gonna think of Arnold Palmer as the guy who made that cool iced tea lemonade drink, when really this was a guy who accomplished so much in his life, did so much in golf, outside of golf. Grew up in a working class family and really came from nothing and established himself as one of the game's greatest golfers, and then went on to have such a successful career as a spokesman for various companies, and just an all-around good person. He was charismatic, people liked him, and obviously one of the better golfers we've seen. So it's really a sad loss, but I mean, someone who lived a tremendous life, and he'll be remembered well.
Yeah, he passed away at the age of 87. There were signs earlier this year that his health was not in the best shape. Notably, back in April, Gary Player, and Jack Nicklaus would hit the ceremonial first tee shots of the Masters. This year, Palmer was in attendance, but he did not take the first tee shot because of his health. And when we met with Gary Player a couple weeks ago, he mentioned his concern for Arnold's health. And it's always one of those things that you kind of are expecting it to happen just because, 87, but when it happens, you're still not ready for it.
Yeah, no, especially not. I mean, without, in general, also Sunday just being such a sad day in the sports world, to have, towards the end of the day, the Arnold Palmer news come out is just, really, it's a bit upsetting, but for him to even play, I mean, he was playing golf almost up until the very end there, and to be able to continue to go out and play the game that you love and continue getting out in front of the people and being active, and it was really cool to see that he loved that game so much, and he wasn't just gonna retire and spend his last years sitting around the house or something like that. I mean, he truly loved the game, and he played it as long as he could, almost right up to the end.
Yeah, and he will definitely be missed, not just in the golf community, but in the general sports community. And I know I will definitely be having quite a few Arnold Palmers in his honor over the next couple of days. I've yet to have one. I'm sure you will be too. Do you like yours with more lemonade or iced tea, I have to ask?
I kind of like the 50-50 split.
You like the 50-50 split?
I mean, it's such a genius, it's so simple, but it's so perfect. You get half and half. It's just two great drinks, and you combine them. It's like, 1 plus 1 equals 4. That's the type of combination we're talking about here. It just creates something so much better than the two individual parts, and just another one of his great accomplishments.
Absolutely, yeah. I generally am a 50-50 fan as well. That said, they did a 30 for 30 several years ago on the Arnold Palmer drink, and he said on camera that iced tea needs to be the dominating factor, and if iced tea isn't, then it's not really an Arnold Palmer. So I think the next few Arnold Palmers I have, there'll probably be more iced tea than lemonade just in his honor. But on the other sad news from Sunday, Arnold Palmer, we found out about that morning though, the devastating boating accident in South Florida that claimed the life of 3 individuals, one of them being potential Hall of Famer Jose Fernandez from the Miami Marlins, an ace pitcher who I think he won Rookie of the Year one year, didn't he?
Rookie of the Year in 2013, All-Star in both 2013 and this year, 2016. He had some injuries the last couple of years, and this year he really finally bounced back, and he went back to being that dominant pitcher, and just so tragic and so shocking. I mean, it's the type of thing normally you wake up on a Sunday morning and you're setting your fantasy lineups, you're excited, it's football, and then that news comes out, and it totally throws a wrench in your entire day. Just so young, 24 years old. I mean, I just turned 24 last week, and this is a guy who is at that age had already accomplished so much. Coming over from Cuba, he tried several times, I think 3 or 4 times before he finally made it over and pursued his dream of a big league career, and it's just such an inspiring story. And he had so much talent, so much potential, and he just was someone who was so passionate about baseball and about life. He really, he truly enjoyed everything he did in life and did everything with a passion, and it was so beautiful to see. And then to see, his life, and so short like that, so tragically, and with he just announced a few days before that his girlfriend was pregnant with their first child, and they were excited to be starting a family together, and to see that all come to an end is just, it's truly, truly horrible.
Yeah, it really is. And especially for, like you say, he's really had a comeback year, so to speak, with the Marlins. And I'm not sure if they're still mathematically eligible for a wild card spot, but they have been in the thick of it for much of the season.
Yeah, at this point, I think it's pretty much over for them. They were right around the cusp, but there's just, not that much time left in the year. I don't think they can make up the ground. But one of the amazing things that we saw coming out of this was, obviously his teammates, loved him so much, and they're so, distraught and heartbroken by this loss. But just there were some amazing events that came out after this. The Marlins' first game back, D. Gordon, who had not hit a home run all year long, he took the first pitch batting from the right side. He's a left-handed batter. He batted from the right side wearing Jose Fernandez's helmet, took the first pitch, and then switched back over to his normal left side. And right after that, hit his very first home run of the season and hit a long home run. And that was just really like one of those magical moments in baseball that just, something that you might see in a movie. And he had tears in his eyes as he rounded the bases. Another one, Aldamis Diaz, the shortstop for the St. Louis Cardinals, he grew up playing with Jose Fernandez in Cuba. They were Little League teammates together. And he attended Jose's funeral, then came back to the Cardinals the next day, and he hit a grand slam. And so a lot of these guys just really touched by the loss of Jose. I mean, so many of the Cuban and Latino players were, so close with this guy, such a good relationship with this guy. And, they came out, and it was almost like they had Jose with them as they played those games. And they hit these home runs, and it's just such an emotional moment, and, just such an outpouring of love for a guy that, was so loved by so many people.
Yeah, I remember just even today and yesterday seeing the footage of the teammates accompanying the hearse as it drives by Marlins Park as they take Jose Fernandez by the stadium for the final time. But it also reminds me very much of about 14 years ago when those of you who might remember Darryl Kyle, the longtime veteran pitcher who died several years ago while the Cardinals were on the road at the Cubs. I'm not sure exactly why it sticks out to me still even 14, 15 years later, but it still does. And the way the Cardinals were able to bounce back and win the following game, because like the situation with Fernandez, that game was canceled on Sunday night, just like the Cardinals-Cubs game was the day of Kyle's death. But it really is. It really puts you in a brand new perspective when you're in that kind of situation. You're forced to delay a game because of a player death. But yeah, we definitely are mourning the losses of Jose Fernandez and Arnold Palmer. Moving on to a slightly cheerier topic. It is the final week of the baseball season. Seedings are really it's down to home field advantage. The playoff spots, for the most part, your Red Sox clinched the AL East. Cleveland Indians, AL Central champions, although they were trying to see if they could overtake the Rangers for home field advantage. I'm not sure that's going to happen now, especially for starters, because they had a game last night against the Tigers. That went into a rain delay, was not resumed that night. They were hoping to resume it this afternoon, but they're still in a rain delay up in Detroit, so they might not be able to finish it until Monday, is what one of the current reports suggests. But bottom line is, Indians division winners for the first time since 2007, and that was when they made the ALCS most recently, when they lost to the Red Sox in 7.
Yep. Yes, and I remember that 07 series very well. J.D. Drew actually hit his $70 million grand slam in that game, about the only good thing he did for the Red Sox in his time there. But that was a very big home run. As far as the Indians, can't say enough about what they've done this year. I think they were a little bit overlooked coming into the season, but Terry Francona's done a tremendous job with that group. They have a great pitching staff. They went out and they made some moves at the trade deadline, brought in Andrew Miller, and they're a very good team. Rangers are a very good team. Red Sox are a very good team. So it's really hard to say between those three who might come out. I mean, in a 7-game series, really anything can happen. The thing I'm looking at most closely as we hit these final few days of the regular season is that AL wild card. You got the Blue Jays and Orioles right now holding those 2 spots down. Tigers are just a game back of them. So could be some pretty good drama in those final few days, and then seeing which team emerges in that 1-game playoff, where again it's really just roll the dice, man. Anything can happen in one game.
It really is. And then in the National League, Pittsburgh Pirates were still eligible for a wild card spot coming into this week, but then they lose on Tuesday to the Cubs, and that officially eliminates them. First time they will miss out on the postseason since 2012. It was just a struggle for them that final part of the season. Once the All-Star break hit, they never really could find the success that had served them so well in the first half.
Yeah, and the way I saw it, they've effectively been out of it for a couple of weeks now. I know they were kind of hanging around in that 3.5 to 5 games out range, but to me it was always the Cardinals and the Mets who are still battling for it right now. So those are the teams that it's going to come down to in the NL, and just a tough stretch run for the Pirates. And in a lot of ways, they did a lot better than most people expected. They trade away Mark Melancon, and you kind of think, oh, they're kind of packing it in for the season. But they continued to win games, and they hung around for a while. So give them credit for that. We'll see if they can bounce back next year, see what they do in the offseason as far as adding guys, developing their prospects. They got a lot of young pitching talent. I know they were experimenting, calling guys up in these final few months and just seeing who's going to be around for the long term and giving those guys a chance. So I think they're in a pretty decent position going forward the next couple of years. Yeah,
well, this is the time of year that I usually start tuning back into baseball just to watch the playoffs and the drama of a 5-game or a 7-game series on the days when there's no college football, of course.
Right.
Which, we're not that far away from Tuesday night college football. I know as an Ohio University graduate, the midweek MAC-tacular, that's what we called it when the MAC would always have midweek games on ESPN. That was something I always look forward to in college. But moving on from football and baseball, a big weekend in golf, not just with the remembrance of Arnold Palmer, but it is the Ryder Cup week. USA is hosting at Hazeltine in Minnesota, up in the Minneapolis area. USA has only won the Ryder Cup once this century, 2008 at Valhalla. They should have won 4 years ago at Medina in Chicago. They had a 10-6 lead. They only needed 4 points out of a possible 12 to win the cup, and Europe found a way to storm back, get the win. And depending on who you're rooting for, it's either the miracle at Medina or the meltdown at Medina. But Davis Love III is back as captain. He'll have a chance for redemption, and he has a lot of great resources. He has Tiger Woods. He'll be there as an assistant captain. Bubba Watson, who I'm very surprised did not get chosen as a captain's pick for Team USA. He will be there as an assistant captain. And I think, based on what we've seen from the golf world, I think this U.S. team can genuinely contend with the Europeans.
Well, you'd always think they'd be in a position to contend. We always have some of the top few golfers in the world in that spot. It'll be interesting to see. The thing I'm most curious about is, what are we going to get out of Tiger Woods? What exactly can he bring from a golf perspective? I know as far as, being a leader and a guy with, such high credibility, but what, from an actual golf standpoint, do you think we're going to see out of Tiger?
That's going to be interesting because, the fact that he won't be playing, he'll be serving as an assistant captain. They generally don't play. But I'm as interested as you are to see how he does, just walking with the players on the course starting Friday, Saturday, and then especially the singles matches on Sunday when you have 12 groups all on the course at one time. You can only cover so many men. But that's going to be very interesting to see how Tiger does, because he definitely, I could see him being a captain of Team USA in the future.
Yeah.
This would probably go a big way towards determining whether that happens immediately in the near future, or we would have to wait a while to see that. Meanwhile, we got high school football coming up this week. A couple big games in our area, notably down in the Lynn side. Number 6 undefeated, yet to give up a point, Nicholas County. I completely messed that up. Taking on number 3 undefeated James Monroe in the Lynn side. That's you're going to be at that game, our Northside Chevy game of the week.
I'm excited for that. I feel like we've been talking about this one for a couple of weeks now, because these teams, Nicholas County, I don't know if anyone expected this kind of performance for them so far in the season. Like you said, haven't given up a point so far. Their offenses look pretty good. Their defense just looks unbelievable. And as good as their defense looks, James Monroe's offense looks just as good on the other side. They have several players who can break plays open, and just overall, a lot of talent. And it'd be the first time both of these teams have really been tested in a real tough matchup. So it'd be interesting to see how this one plays out.
And you've gotten the chance to see both of these teams in their home stadiums already once this year. You got to see the Grizzlies in Summersville. You got to see the Mavericks in the Lynn side. That's going to be a packed atmosphere. I can't wait for it.
Oh yeah, the fans will be out, man. It'll be really exciting. You know, high school football is always such a great moment for these communities. You know, all the people in the town come out and they get to see these kids represent their town and their area, and this should be a great game. I'm really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, that's where also we're going to be looking for a Wendy's Fan Cam Fan of the Week. So Mavericks fans, be sure to show your school spirit. Not to show your school spirit, but do it in front of Tom so he can name you our Wendy's Fan Cam Fan of the Week.
Get excited. I had fun last week at the Bluefield game. You know, the kids had their homecoming weeks. They're all dressed up in tuxedos and bow ties and all that. So that was really fun, you know, getting to see them show out that way. So see if you can top that. Tuxedo, can you bring something else to the table? You know, crazy outfits, just great energy, anything like that. I want to see stuff like that. I want some good fans out there to pick that fan candidate. You got to earn that Wendy's, man.
Absolutely. Other matchups on tap for on Friday include George Washington coming to Beckley. It's been a very tough season for the Flying Eagles in their first year under Street Surrett. They are coming off a loss on the road at Capital Midland. They welcomed a George Washington team currently ranked 15th in the state. There are actually several teams ranked 15th in Class AAA, one of them being Greenbrier East. And Greenbrier East has a big game on the road at 6th-ranked University up in the Morgantown area of the state coming up this week. But another big game I'm looking forward to, two teams that haven't had as much success as they were hoping for the season, but Valley at Meadowbridge. One of those teams is going to get their first win of the season, and that's going to be big for them.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, they've struggled this year. I know especially Meadowbridge, you know, they have that streak of going to the playoffs. So I think it's 6 going on 7 years, and it certainly looks like that streak's not going to continue this year. But from a morale standpoint and for first-year head coach Dwayne Reichert to try to get something positive building for that team, it would be huge for them to get that win. And, you know, Valley as well, you know, it's been a tough couple of years for them. So it'd be, you know, only one of them can win, but it would certainly be nice for either of these teams to come away with the victory, and we'll see how it plays out, man.
Yeah, Valley, it's been an absolute roller coaster, especially for these current seniors, because it was their freshman year that they had an undefeated regular season.
Yeah.
As sophomores, they go, I think it was 7-3. They miss out on the playoffs by 1/10 of a point.
It's tough.
And then the whole issue with not having a designated home stadium in 2015, and they had a tough 1-9 record, and another tough start to this season. Granted, they've played some very talented teams. They had Fayetteville, they had Clay Battelle. Those teams, Fayetteville is on back home this week. They're hosting Pikeview, and the Pirates, they're on a roll right now as well.
Yep, well, and you certainly expect them to get the win against Pikeview this week. You know, Fayetteville's just been playing really, really well, and they've done it, you know, with a lot of Will Fenton throughout the season. Last week against Oak Hill, they showed that they can win games in more than one way. You know, the defense is making some plays in that game, so they have. It's amazing. They only have 23 guys in the whole program, but they all seem to contribute in some way, and it's not just a one-dimensional team. They can get it done a variety of ways. I know they've been trying to incorporate the run a little bit more and make it a little more balanced, but this team has shown that they can get it done in more than one way, and I don't think anyone's going to beat them for a little while. They look really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. Another game I'm looking forward to that we'll have on the 5th quarter, presented by Wendy's in Southern West Virginia. Midland Trail, they're looking to bounce back from a loss last week against Van. They welcome Gilmer County, the Hico. The Titans currently ranked 6th in Class Single A. They're going to be bringing a strong challenge. Midland Trail trying to reach the playoffs. That was the goal they set for themselves back in preseason. They wanted to get to the playoffs. And there were moments last year, 2015, where they did play like a legitimate Class Single A playoff contender. Some weeks, you know, didn't quite go the way they were expecting to, but we've seen a lot more of the positives of Midland Trail as Frank Isaacs continues to build the program the way he sees it being rebuilt in his second season in charge of the Patriots. But you've gotten to see them a couple times. It's still always going to be a work in progress, but they're definitely on the right track as opposed to where they were potentially several years ago.
Yeah, you know, they've had a couple of games where, you know, maybe they didn't play up to their potential or they struggled a little bit, but I think overall I really like this team. You know, they're a resilient team, and they work really hard, and I think they do have a lot of talent between Thomas Ferris and some of these other guys here. So I think, you know, this is a good challenge for them. Gilmer County, one of the better teams in Single A. If they can come out and win this game, that'll go a long way as far as building their confidence as a playoff team, and, you know, obviously the extra win in the books helps from a mathematical standpoint as well.
Yeah, it really does, and so it's going to be a great week of high school football on Friday. Be sure to tune in to the fifth quarter presented by Wendy's of Southern West Virginia. And then we'll have college football highlights on Saturday. You'll be at the Concord UC game. Should be a good one. I'll be at WVU K-State. And we're also going to be keeping an eye on Bluefield College, see if they can get the job done at Reinhardt. And then
come on, Rams, get that W.
Yeah, come on. We would definitely love to see the Rams. If they could get one at home, too, that would also be great as well.
Oh, yeah,
also, Marshall on the road at Pitt. How did the Thundering Herd respond to 2 losses by an average of, 29, 30 points?
Yeah, it's been tough stretch for them, but hopefully they can bounce back this week. We'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. Well, that will wrap it up for this episode of The Change-Up on WOAY Sports. Be sure to check us out on Facebook at SportsWOAY. That is also our Twitter handle, or you can follow us individually at DigbyMatt, at Tom Beal WOAY. And, we'll see you next week for another great week of high school football talk, college football talk, NASCAR talk as well. We'll get into some NASCAR talk with the round of 12 as they get set for the second round of the chase for the Sprint Cup. But thanks for watching. This has been The Change Up on WOAY Sports. We'll see you next week.